Hello and welcome to JudgeCast. This is episode 20 of our series of YouTube videos focusing on how to become a level 1 judge. My name is Bryan and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Charles Feather.
Hello.
And the one and only Marcos Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. So let's begin, as always, by giving a shout out to our sponsor, Judge Foundry. Judge Foundry is a mentorship-based nonprofit organization serving the U.S. and Canada in providing certifications for tabletop gaming officials. They manage everything to do with obtaining and maintaining your certification and provide educational resources like this one to ensure that every Judge Foundry certified judge has the knowledge and skills that they need to be successful. When it comes to running Magic events at your local game store or at a larger international convention, Judge Foundry is a great resource for you to certify your skills. For more information on Judge Foundry, visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to find out how you can earn your level. You can also join the Judge Foundry Discord to chat and interact with the Judge Foundry judging community in the US and Canada. The links for both are in the description below.
In this episode, we are going to begin our transition away from the comprehensive rules and start to look at the tournament rules, policy, and general judging philosophy. What separates judges from people who are good at the rules is that judges are interested in running events. So we are going to begin that discussion with the most common regular REL events you might run at your local store. Every store is different, so we won't cover every corner case in depth. But if you wish to go deeper or explore topics outside the scope of what is needed for Level 1 exam, you can delve into our extensive library at JudgeCast.com or search for us on your podcast app of choice. Our podcasts are typically at least an hour, so you get both more detailed discussion, humor, insight, and of course, our laudable deliberations.
So let's start this off by defining what a REL is. REL, R-E-L, stands for Rules Enforcement Level. There are 3 of them in Magic: regular, competitive, and professional. While all RELs use the comprehensive rules, there are different tournament rules and different policy documents that apply to the different RELs. For L1s, the focus is on regular rules enforcement level store events, with occasional branching out to regular REL events at conventions. At an LGS, the most common regular REL events might be something like Wednesday Night Draft or Friday Night Commander or pre-release, maybe a store championship. Typically, these are broken up conceptually into constructed events, where players bring pre-made decks from home, or limited events where packs are provided to the players as part of the tournament, and the players are limited to the cards in those packs.
I see what you did there. Where on the flip side, constructed events are the easiest and have the fewest logistical concerns. We're going to talk about commanders separately later. For now, we'll talk about non-commander constructed events. So for these events, you'll need at least 60 cards. You may also have up to a 15-card sideboard. Card legality is determined by the format, whether it be Pauper, Standard, Modern, Legacy, or even Pioneer if you're a degenerate. Each format has their own separate ban list that is separately maintained. For constructed events, you need a minimum of 4 players and a minimum of 3 rounds in order for that event to be officially sanctioned.
The tournament organizer, also known as the TO, or the judge helping the TO, will use the event link tool to create and sanction events. The players then register for the event using the companion app. These are essentially 2 sides of the same tool. Event link is the TO scorekeeping side, and companion is the player-facing side, or the client, typically on their phones. As players register for your event, they will be placed in the lobby. TOs, scorekeepers, and judges with access can move the players from the lobby into the actual event as they pay. When an event starts, players will receive notifications on their app, but you should also verbally announce that pairings have been pushed to their phones. And check outside for, people socializing or maybe smoking. How do I know you have smokers? Everyone has smokers.
Before you start the first round, you will need to make a few head judge announcements. These announcements should be as brief as possible. They can typically contain telling the players how many players there are, how many rounds there'll be. If they run into a problem, they can call for a judge, and then any special instructions. Then you want to start the round. Rounds must be at least 40 minutes, but 50 minutes is the norm. A typical announcement to start the round is something like, the current time is 7:10, this round will end at 8 p.m., you have 50 minutes, you may begin.
Late players can be entered into the event with a round 1 loss. How do we know you have late players? Because everyone has late players. If 2 late players both show up, it might be tempting to just pair them together and let them play out that round. Do not do this. These players were late. You're already accommodating them by allowing them to enter with a round 1 loss. If you end up pairing these late players, you've actually destroyed any incentive that any players will have to show up on time for your events. Effectively, you're setting a really bad example.
Yeah, you want your events to start on time.
Exactly. Once the round is over and all the results are recorded, you may start the next round. And here, you just rinse, wash, and repeat until the event is over.
At the end of each round, there are a few things to concern yourself with. When the 50 minutes end, you need to call time on round, or time in round. The active player is turn 0, and then there are 5 additional turns. In this part of the event, you want to make sure all the results for finished matches are reported, and players that are still playing know that they are in turns, and know what being in turns means. Believe it or not, you will need to explain this, probably frequently, to players.
Limited events add a few more challenges. There are typically 2 types of limited events, draft and sealed. The core of the event is the same as constructed events. The starting a round, ending the round, doing the end of round. However, how players build their decks is very different from constructed events. For draft, players are each given 3 packs from a set and placed in pods of approximately 8 players, and as close to a circle as the store allows. Players will then open a pack, okay, one at a time. They'll open a pack, choose a card from that pack, and then pass the pack to their neighbor while receiving cards from their other neighbor. Each player picks and passes until all cards from the pack are chosen. Then we open the next pack and we repeat. Okay, now, of all parts, of all tournament types, this procedure right here is the part where players can fail catastrophically. So we're going to go over the full procedure in detail here.
Yes. This is the part that will probably show up as the most replayed in this particular video because it will be very, very helpful for you moving forward. So here's how this goes. All players open their first pack together. They're supposed to count the cards face down and then remove any tokens or rules cards from the pack. The counting is just to make sure that everyone is starting with the same number of cards. You don't want to find out you were short a card because of a printing error halfway through the pack because then it's impossible to fix. Now, once you've done the counting and verified everybody has a complete pack and everybody has the same number of cards in their packs, then the players can pick up the packs, look through the contents, and pick a card and place it in front of them face down, and then the remainder of that pack gets passed to their left. Once a card is picked, it cannot be returned back to that pack. There are no takesy-backsies here. Players are not to reveal the front faces of their cards, or tell others what they choose, or the contents of the pack, or what colors they're in. Yes, we understand some sets have double-faced cards which will be visible to the table. Don't worry about it. That's just something you can't help. The big focus here is the players should not be sharing information about what they have or are doing with anyone else at the table. From there, this process is repeated until all cards in this first pack are chosen. Then we open the second pack and repeat the same process with one change. This time we're going to pass the packs to the right. Do the same process, go to the third pack, and for the third pack, we change it back to passing the packs to the left after you make your pick.
Now, judges need to remain extra vigilant during a draft. This is because players can mess up a lot of different ways and don't often catch themselves until much later. Players can pick the wrong number of cards. Some formats do allow players to pick 2 cards with each pick, or only the first pick from each pack. The player can get confused and select the wrong number of cards. Players can pass their pack in the wrong direction. This most often happens with the first pass of each pack, not as it goes forward, but it can still happen down the line. Players can swap their pack and their picks and pass their picks instead of packs. If there is a pile of packs to their right waiting to be picked up, they can pick up the wrong pack. Players have even been known to open all 3 packs at once and pick and pass the stack. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus, and yes, this has happened.
Basically, players can mess up a lot of different ways, so the judge needs to be vigilant. One common technique to reduce, not eliminate, but reduce problems is with something called zone drafting. Zone drafting establishes that there are 3 zones for each drafter. We have one zone, which is the cards in their hand, what they're picking. Then we have cards to their right and cards to their left. Okay? Players will share the zone. So my zone to the left is another player's zone to the right. Players are then instructed, if at any time they go to add cards to a zone, and there are cards already there, then the cards they are attempting to add have to stay where they are for a while. Okay, that's a little complicated. So what this means in practice is, if I go to pass cards to the person to my left, and there are still cards there because that player to my left has not picked up what I previously passed yet, I need to hold on to those cards in my hand, and I cannot pick up any of the cards placed to my right to begin picking. I have to sit there and wait. And then, once those cards are picked up, I can then take the cards in my hand, put them to my left, and pick up the cards from my right. Keeping it set in this way really reduces potential problems.
Yep. Now, as you're going through this process, players may review their picks in between drafting packs. So once you've finished drafting your first pack, you can give everybody a few seconds to look at that face-down pile that they've been building so that they can remember what they've picked. In regular REL events, players may also review picks while they're drafting, provided that they're not holding any packs that they're being chosen from. So this is also another big potential error point, and again, why that whole zone drafting really matters. If you already have cards in your hand, it's really easy to mix them up with the pile you're starting to review. After all packs are drafted, players then get 25 minutes to make a 40-card deck, including their basic lanes. The TO typically provides basics. However, snowlands and wastes, while they are basic lands, those can only be included in their decks if they were drafted from the packs that you opened. All cards drafted, but not in the 40-card deck, are considered to be part of that player's sideboard.
Players can be paired for matches within a pod or cross-pod using Event Link. Playing within a pod means that players will only be paired with other players within the pod. For cross-pod pairing, any player in the event can be paired with any other based on standings, regardless of what pod they are drafted in. For regular REL events, cross-pod is often sufficient. However, some drafters prefer playing opponents within their pod, as that is more formal and advantages the more skilled players.
For sealed limited events, there are also some different additional rules. And the most common type of sealed regular REL events is a pre-release. So we're going to talk about this as though this was a pre-release. For sealed, players need to be seeded for build before round 1. They will receive 6 packs to build their deck. For pre-releases, there's often a pre-release kit that contains the 6 packs, a promo, maybe a spin down life counter. But for non-pre-release sealed events, 6 play boosters is what they get. Boom.
At this point, you seat the players for their build. You pass out the product, and here you may need to get help from another store employee depending on how many players there are waiting for you to pass around the product. Now, do not let the players open the product just yet. It might be tempting for them to grab those packs as soon as you drop them in front of them and then start ripping them open. Make sure to instruct everybody to not open until you tell them to. Effectively, players will stop listening to anything you say once they start opening packs, and you still have head judge announcements to give. Now, for pre-releases, the vibe is even more chill, and your head judge announcements can be more fun and laid back. I personally have done a pre-release head judge announcement while wearing an inflatable T-Rex outfit. So, you have fun with it. Because ultimately, this is often several players' first time playing in any sort of structured tournament. So make sure to take more time to explain how the event will go. Maybe explain some of the things that you think are pretty self-explanatory. Maybe explain 1 to 2 of the new mechanics, but avoid the temptation of explaining everything. Remember that the players are there because they want to play. So just jot down a few notes and speak to what you feel is most important for what they need in that moment to enjoy playing.
Sealed events give players 30 minutes to build their decks. There is an additional 15 minutes for release and pre-release weekends. So more often than not, you're actually giving them a total of 45 minutes. Players can enroll late if they show up late. Their penalty is just that they don't get as much build time as everyone else does. Be sure to collect trash. There'll be a lot of trash.
Players make a 40-card deck also here, including basics, and just like in draft, snowlands and wastes can only be included if they were open in the packs. All cards not in the main deck are part of the sideboard and can be used for Game 2 and Game 3. For limited regular REL events, both draft and sealed, there's this thing called continuous construction. This means that you can change their deck between rounds, even between games, and they do not have to return to the original 40. Okay? Continuous construction is not a thing in constructed events or limited events that require deck lists.
Now, deck lists by default are not required at regular REL events, either constructed or limited. However, the tournament organizer may require them. Typically, this is required when significant prizes are on the line, and the TO has not decided to run the event at competitive for some reason. Or maybe there's a problem with cheating that they want to address by requiring deck lists. Again, this is just not the norm, but an option you can apply if necessary.
Having separate top 8s for regular REL events is not recommended, unless the event type requires it. Those are typically reserved for larger events with more prestigious prizes, and while a few players might really want a top 8, the store needs to balance the desire of a handful of vocal players against the additional time top 8s take.
Tournaments typically followed the Swiss pairing algorithm to match players against each other. So players who get a win are given 3 points, a draw is worth 1 point, and a loss is worth 0 points. Players with a like number of points are paired against each other randomly, unless when they've randomly been paired together, they have actually previously played together in this event. Then the software will try and match it up with another player with a like number of points. Sometimes it can't do that, or there's an odd number of players with the same number of points, so players may occasionally get paired down with a player with less points if there's not enough players with the same number of points to match up. The top 8 of a tournament follows a specific bracket system, and it's different for constructed versus limited. For constructed, the bracket is essentially the same thing you'll see in college basketball, where the first seed plays the 8th seed in round 1, and it's set up so that the first seed and the second seed player can't possibly play each other until the finals. You can manually create a bracket using the template on the screen. Right, Marcos?
Of course.
Limited events use the same bracket structure, okay, but typically seat the players randomly for the draft. Then pair the players using what's called the big X little x method, shown on the screen, and structure it in such a way that the players who sat beside each other during a draft cannot play each other until the finals. From a history standpoint, this is set up that way so that players can't collude and pass each other, certain colors and stuff like that in a draft. That's why it's both random and set up so that people that sat next to each other can't play until the finals. You can manually create a bracket for draft using the template on the screen.
Pause here for dramatic effect. And we're back. So now a few words about Commander. Typically, stores will just run Commander events as a quote-unquote player list event. That is, there's no real round structure, there's no pairings that are posted, there may or may not be entry fees, and there may or may not be prizes. If you're running a Commander event with actual rounds, you want to keep in mind that Event Link does not pair players in pods of 4. The strategy to use is to pair everyone as though it was a 1v1 event, and then just manually tell tables 1 and 2 that they're in a pod. And then tables 3 and 4 are a pod, and so on and so forth down the rows. Then just record a winner for the quote-unquote matches that have a winner, and 0-0 for the matches that don't. When you pair the next round, winners will be grouped together automatically, and you pair at the table again.
Part of running a tournament is giving prizes. Prizes can be distributed several ways, and each way has a potential impact on how your event is run. We're going to cover all 3 methods. The first is random. This is generally not advised, but sometimes there's a situation where you have extra product to distribute. Perhaps Wizards only sent 8 of a particular promo, and your event has 30 or more players. In these cases, it might be reasonable to hold a raffle or a drawing to see who gets the promos. As long as it's randomized and it's fair, should be good. The next method is based on record. Prizing here is based on the player's record. It could take the form of a pack per win or something, but in this particular case, a player's prizing is determined by the number of games they win, lose, and draw. And then the third method is based on standing. Here, prizes are based on how the players rank compared to how well other players rank. At the very end of your event, all of the players are put in a list from first to last, and they're numbered numerically, so you can do it this way.
Okay. While talking about prizing isn't necessarily something in the tournament rules, your prizing structure plays a strong role in determining the vibe of your event. A flat pack per win prizing structure will generate a much more chill environment than having some top-heavy prizes for the top 8 only structure. Stores have to answer the question, is it better to give more people less prizes or more prizes to less people? You will typically get different answers from players based on if they are more competitive or more casual. One advantage of prizes based on record is you're not locked into a certain number of rounds like you would be if you were trying to give top prizes to the top 8. Additionally, you do not have to worry about players IDing into a top 8 if that's a thing you care about. But then you do have to worry about the who gets a pack if we draw conversation. Regular REL events can afford to be less strict with the rules than competitive events because the prizes are not overly significant. Okay, if you find yourself wanting to run an event with significant prizes, regular might not be the correct rules enforcement level.
And just to touch on something you said earlier, when you say IDing, that means intentionally drawing with each other because they recognize they have enough points that they could get to top 8 if they just got the 1 point to draw.
And if you want to know more about IDing, listen to our episode 21, which talks about tournament rules.
Yep. All right, so a final thing about regular REL events. The focus for these events is making sure that the players have a good time. Regular REL events gives you a lot of flexibility in doing new and interesting structures to support your players. However, you want to make sure you are doing things that are both fair and fun. When we get to the jar episode, we'll talk about what to do when things go wrong. But again, the emphasis for regular REL, if you have to choose between is this more fair or is this more fun, you tend to lean more towards fun. And with that, that is everything on regular REL that we're going to discuss today. So once again, we'd like to thank Judge Foundry for their support in sponsoring this series, for helping you earn your level 1 certification. Make sure to visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to learn how you can join the magic judging community in the US and Canada and earn your certification with Judge Foundry.
Join us next time as we continue our series for earning your level 1 certification and talk about tournament rules. Yay! And if you want to reach out to us, we have our own Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. The invite link to our Discord is in the description below, as well as our JudgeCast and individual social media links. If you're a fan of our content, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and ring that bell to be notified of when new videos in this series are posted. or when a new episode of our full podcast is released. Make sure to check out our channel's playlist for our complete L1 series, as well as a Learn to Judge playlist with episodes from JudgeCast's history, focused on helping you become a better judge. And as always, you can find everything relating to JudgeCast at judgecast.com. With that, I'm Charles Featherer, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
I'm Bryan Prillman, and be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see pictures of Marcos in an inflatable T-Rex costume.
What?
I make no promises.
I just made a promise for you. It's written in stone.
No!